All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I am Adam Begnini of WGRZ TV and Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Sal Maiorana, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, and with us today, a gentleman who has been with us before here on this particular show, and a guy we go way back with. That we're dating ourselves here, but and I suppose we are you too, Bucky. but back, former Buffalo Bill, way back in the day. Bucky Brooks and Jaguar as well, host of Believe in Jaguars here on the Believe Network. Buck, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. Real good.
Well. This should be interesting. Sunday, 1 o'clock down in Jacksonville. What's your initial take on this matchup?
Really even matchup, a really great matchup, and it's kind of compelling because you have number one rush offense versus number one rush defense. You have two teams that I'll say their coaches approach the game in very similar fashion. Complementary football is everything. The Buffalo Bills do a great job of running the ball, controlling the ball, and that kind of minimizes the plays that their defense has to participate in. The Jaguars are similar. They want to run it, but they've been throwing it of late. And what that has allowed them to do is to force teams to be one-dimensional. They play really good against the run early, and then they feast on turnovers when you're in long yardage situations. And so this is – and listening to the pressers all week, Sean McDermott has talked about takeaways, turnovers being the key. That is going to be the key to this game because the Jaguars have gotten a lot of takeaways. And when the Bills have lost, it's because they've given the ball away. And if both teams hold on to it, it's going to be a fourth quarter affair. And those last 15 minutes are going to decide who goes on to the next round.
Hey, Buck, it feels to me, and I've written this a couple times in a couple places this week, that the Bills have got to stay two-dimensional in this game, but it's going to be very difficult for them. We know that their passing game has struggled. Their wide receivers have been, non-productive for most of the year. They're going to have to run it. Can they run it? I mean, James Cook is great. They have a really good offensive line, but what about that Jaguars defense do you think why are they number one in the league against the run? What's going to be the key there?
I say one, man, the defensive coordinator, Anthony Campanile, is really good. And the best part of what he's been able to do is his ability to adapt and adjust early. So there have been teams that have been able to move the ball up and down the field early, and he's able to make an adjustment to kind of what I call turn off the spigot. Like the Tennessee Titans ran the ball successfully the first drive they had it. They shut it down immediately in the second quarter. Same thing with some of these other opponents. Jonathan Taylor had some success early. They find ways to do it. So the main thing will be how deep can Joe Brady go in his bag to keep the run game going? What can he show early, then change to late to keep the Jaguars guessing as to what's coming? And then it's about, can you get those guys to the ground from the Jaguar standpoint? Can you tackle James Cook and get him to the ground? Can you tackle Josh Allen and get him to the ground? Because both are very difficult to tackle and bring to the ground, even though they do it in different ways. Like Cook is slippery and elusive. Josh Allen is just big and physical, but it takes you hitting him to get him down, and that's something that you have to account for when you play good defense against them.
So that's where I was going to go next. That's where I was going to go next on this one was, we understand the stats and the number one run defense in the National Football League and dealing with James Cook and the challenges associated with that. But when you have a quarterback like Allen who can make things happen with his legs, how much of a dimension does that add, and how does that impact what Jacksonville is going to try to do defensively?
Well, you got to keep all eyes on them. Now, much like Buffalo, the Jags are a zone-based team, so they want to have 22 sets of eyes on the quarterback. They want to make sure that when he breaks contain, everyone sees that they can rally, they can plaster deep, but they can run and rally and make sure Josh Allen's scrambles don't turn into explosive plays. Now, the trick is those are the hidden yardages, the hidden yardage that's unaccounted for, right? Because normally you don't count the quarterback in the run game. Where with Josh, you have to count him, whether it's design or impromptu runs, those yards matter. And a lot of times for Josh, I said the best part of him and his maturation process is he has learned how to run in what we call gotta have it moments. Third down, red zone, 2-minute, games on the line. That's when he's using his legs. So he's not willy-nilly when he's running around. It's very calculated, and there's spots in the game where you know that his legs become a factor. You have to be aware of that and be aware of when it's a high probability of him taking off and you got to have enough bodies to deal with them.
What specifically do they do against the run scheme wise? Like, what are we supposed to be looking for as to, why they've been so stout? Is it up front? Is it the linebackers? What exactly is the reason they're number one in the league in run defense?
They're playing really good at the line of scrimmage. Devon Hamilton, nose tackle, is probably playing the best football of his career. He's been rock solid at the point of attack. Eric Armstead is also playing well. The veteran is playing much better this year than he did last year because he's moved back to his natural position at defensive tackle. And then Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen, they've done a really good job of setting the edges. And then the biggest part of it is, man, everyone is running to the ball, and they have a thing where they talk about it like, man, run and hit. They're going to run to the ball and they're going to hit whatever's moving. And so they have really tried to embrace a very physical tenor to this defense. And so what they want to do is make it a very physical affair. And so you guys played the Houston Texans early in the year, and they're not quite like that on defense, but those games that they participate in, that's kind of how they want to play it. They are okay kind of bringing the game into the muck and making it an ugly affair, particularly on the defensive side of the ball.
All right. Interesting. So Sal mentioned the Bills receivers earlier, and it's interesting that a couple of times Sean McDermott has referenced the Jaguars' addition of Jacoby Myers, right?
Mm-hmm.
As compared to what Buffalo didn't do, at the trade deadline or near it, right? And that's something we'll get into. But from a Buffalo perspective or a Jacksonville defensive perspective, the matchup in the secondary, looking at what the Bills have and don't have at the receiver position and options for Josh Allen. What's been your take on that? And then specifically what your take on it heading into this game?
It's funny because like the Jaguars and teams say this like, hey, it's about us. It's not about them. But the Jaguars being a zone-based team, it's less about the matchup and more about the execution of the zone tactics, meaning understanding where the vulnerable areas of the zone are, understanding to make sure we keep the ball in front, don't let it get to the perimeter, everyone rally and tackle, and they'll gain yards, but just make sure that the 5-yard pass doesn't become a 10 to 12-yard gain. It's very similar to the things that you hear Sean McDermott talk about defensively. And so it's more that making sure that you protect certain areas of the field with Buffalo because they're such a 12 personnel team, making sure that you have your eyes on the tight ends, Kincaid and Knox, and making sure that those guys don't get busy over the middle of the field. And look, Khalil Shakur is, in all essence, like the number one receiver. He's the guy that when they get in trouble in the passing game, that's the one that Josh Allen is going to target. So just being aware of his whereabouts, where he lines up, and understanding in these critical situations, the ball is going to hit his way.
You as a wide receiver would be the best person to ask this question, but you just mentioned Shakir. And yes, he is a very good player in the slot for what he does. But Buck, give us your thought on how much it hurts the Bills not to have that true stud on the outside, the guy that, can make things happen down the field. How much is that limiting what they can do in the passing game?
It's funny, right? So there are two ways to look at it. You can have the stud receiver when your quarterback is more mid-level, or you can have an elite quarterback, and then you can have mid-level receivers, but the quarterback kind of raises the level of play of everyone around him. And I would say that Josh Allen's ascension, a lot of it happened after you removed Stephon Diggs, because what you did is you took the training wheels off of the offense and you made him rely on all aspects of it. Now, the thing that hasn't worked out in the Bills' favor to this point, you thought Keon Coleman would be a factor because he's a big guy on the outside. You thought some of the other guys that have kind of rolled in and out of there would be bigger factors. That hasn't happened. And so right now, the Bills have to operate inside out with the tight ends and the slot receiver being primary, and then hoping that you can get some occasional plays down the field from the outside guys. Brandon Cooks coming over, being a speed merchant, will help add a vertical factor because you have to account for his speed. But right now, they almost have to play connect the dots in the passing game because they don't have that dominant player that can either take over the game or command a double team that opens up the rest of the field for the rest of the guys.
All right, so I'll just flat out ask you, in your opinion, how much does that limit them as a Super Bowl contender?
I don't think it necessarily limits them, but I would say because I don't think the Jaguars have a dominant number one receiver. I don't think there's anyone that if we ask nationally, defensive coordinators like, hey, who do you have to worry about? I don't know if there's anyone that would command a double team. And so what it requires is a high level of efficiency from the quarterback, and the quarterback has to be disciplined enough to, hey, I'm going to hit the open guy. I don't have a notion at the snap that, hey, a predisposed notion, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to let the progression go, and I'm going to let it go to the open area, and I'm going to trust that they're going to make the play. So a lot of it puts more pressure on Josh Allen to trust the progression and to trust the players. And then those playmakers have to make plays when they're given opportunities.
You know, I'm sure you've watched enough Bills film to be able to answer this question with some knowledge. Are you surprised they don't use James Cook more in the passing game?
A little bit, because he's really good. And having known him and been around him since he was in high school, he can catch the ball out of the field. Like, there's little difference between him and his brother Dalvin, because Dalvin was terrific catching the ball out of the backfield. James also has that skill in his bag. It is a way to do it. And also, like, when you start thinking about people loading up the box and trying to take the run game away, using the screen game, using swings and option routes and those things, that's another touch. And that's another way to add to the total. And as we're beginning to think about football now is scrimmage yards as opposed to rushing yards. And those things is how much impact can they make with the total touches and the total scrimmage yards that they finish at the end of the game.
Because one of the things here in Buffalo, Buck, is that they bring in Ty Johnson, and everyone's got a role. I understand that. Ray Davis is the number 2 running back. Ty Johnson is the third down guy. They trust him. But it just feels to me, and I'm sure Adam feels this way too, they become predictable when they bring Ty Johnson into the game. Many of us have been screaming for really a couple of years now. Ty Johnson has a role, but it shouldn't be as big of a role. James Cook should be on the field on third down because it's one more guy that the defense really has to be concerned with. And that's why we don't see him used in the passing game, because he's usually off the field. I mean, does that strike you as just a guy that talented would be off the field for approximately maybe 50% of the offensive snaps?
Yeah, like I think some of it is like how you're trying to manage his load and his touches and the amount of hits that he takes. And I've seen it. Look, you talk about Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco is a 1,100 guy, 1,000 rushing yards, 100 receptions. James Cook certainly has those abilities to be able to catch the ball out the backfield and add a dimension to the offense. Now, the one thing that we don't know is when you get to the playoffs, it becomes about players more so than plays. And it becomes, how many times can I get the ball to my best player as opposed to which fancy designs do I like? It wouldn't surprise me to see them try and use him a little more in the passing game, because now it's an all hands on deck situation. When you get into the postseason, you do whatever you got to do to advance beyond this round. I would anticipate James Cook being a huge part of the game plan as a runner and a receiver.
All right, so let's flip it and talk about the Jags offensively. And the centerpiece of that is obviously Trevor Lawrence and his development. Talk to me about that dynamic and what's really allowed him to kind of hit a new gear.
I would say it's very similar to the way that Josh Allen kind of developed. I'm not saying that they're similar players, but they do have some traits that remind you of each other. But when Brian Daboll was in Buffalo, I think one of the things that Brian Daboll got Josh Allen to do is to cut it loose and not worry necessarily about the mistakes. Be aggressive, but not reckless. Liam Cohen has really urged and pushed Trevor Lawrence to do that. Don't worry about the mistakes. Be aggressive when it comes to the throws. If you notice, when you look at this offense, the passing game works inside out. It works the middle of the field first, the outside portion of the field later. Well, the reason you have to be aggressive in that is because when you're playing against zone defenses, you got to throw into open windows. You have to let it go before the receiver's out his break, and that requires a level of trust and aggressiveness to do that in those areas. Well, early, Trevor would have to see it, then throw it. But to really be good against zone, you got to let it go and trust that your guy's going to get there. So in bringing Jacoby Myers over, trustworthy receiver, you can throw it, he's going to catch it. He's going to be in the spot where he needs to be. That allows you to be more aggressive. Parker Washington emerging as someone that you can rely on those in-breaking routes. And then Bretton Strange also doing that. When they reshuffled the deck with the wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr. becoming more of a vertical playmaker, it allowed those other guys to be in those prominent roles over the middle. That increased the confidence in Trevor letting it go. And as they made more plays, his confidence continued to grow. And then he just kind of caught fire at the end of the season.
Parker Washington. I mean, we know up in Buffalo about Brian Thomas because that was a guy that I think a lot of people, media and fans, were hoping the Bills were going to go get in the draft last year. It didn't work out. Jacksonville beat him to the punch. Parker Washington, though, is a guy that I don't think at the start of the year many people were really figuring would have the kind of year he's had. What has happened there?
Well, one, I didn't learn this in Buffalo, but I learned this in Green Bay. When I went to the Green Bay Packers, Ron Wolf always had a thing for having wide receivers with punt return experience. And the reason why you want guys that are former punt returners is because yards after catch, also there's a level of toughness they bring, because if you're returning in the kicking game, you got to be tough enough to deal with all the bodies coming at you and that stuff. Well, Park is a punt returner who has great toughness, outstanding ball skills. And what has happened is, man, the more they've given him, the better it's been for this team. Catch and run specialist, making people miss, being dynamic on these crossing routes and diagonal plays has really added an element to the offense. But really, I would say the toughness that he exhibits in going across the middle, catching the ball in traffic between him, Jacoby Myers, and Bretton Strange, these guys are fielders going into the teeth of the defense, and that has allowed this offense to go to the next level.
Okay, so looking at the Bills' body of work defensively this year, we know what they haven't done against the run, and we know what they have done against the pass. Kind of size up that unit, assessing Jacksonville's scheme and plan of attack and that sort of a thing, and the fact that Max Hairston, Bills' rookie cornerback, is going to be out for this game.
Well, look, man, it doesn't matter. The one thing that I know, there's a lot of experience in the back end. And Sean McDermott and that crew, they do a really good job of preparing. And all the different looks that they can show pre-snap, then getting to different things post-snap, they're really a team that kind of plays on the string in the back end. Number one ranked pass defense. They don't give up explosive plays. They're going to test the discipline of the quarterback by making them check it down and throw it short and seeing if he can drive the length of the field with patience in doing that. So that's a big thing. The running game is really the key when it comes to the Jaguars. The Bills have struggled against that. The Jags fancy themselves as a running team, and they want to run it early in the game. That is going to kind of set the table for how this game is going to be played. So if the Bills are able to stop the run early and force Trevor to throw when everyone in the stadium knows he has to throw, that plays in their favor. But if they are allowed the Jaguars to operate with balance, and that balance isn't just run to pass, but it's who is touching the ball, then it becomes problematic, because now it's whack-a-mole trying to figure out which player to stop, because they're very comfortable letting anybody being the primary weapon on offense on a given day.
Now, Buck, we all know that every running game is contingent upon the offensive line, and it's a big reason why the Bills are so good. Cook is great. They have an excellent offensive line. Where are the Jaguars? Because I think that is going to be – we're talking a lot about Bills' run against the Jaguars' run defense. You're right. The other side is going to be just important. Is that offensive line the kind of offensive line that can control a game?
You know, it's interesting, man. I think they're saying, depending on situation, this may be their 9th offensive line combination that could start in this playoff game. So they've had a bunch of people going in and out. They've tried to piecemeal it together, but I would say they've been very effective despite all the changes. And some of that is by design, the way they operated in training camp, the way they operated throughout the offseason in terms of playing musical chairs, but they are very comfortable with their offensive line. I would say that it's not a dominating offensive line where they're just kicking your tail all over the field, but what they do a good job of is latching on and being sticky. And then the running backs will slither and find holes. And so it's I would say kind of a deceptively physical running game, but it's not one of those like, hey, when Baltimore comes to town, you know they're just going to line it up and wham it at you. It's a different approach, but they're really persistent and they're patient with it because they know the running game opens up all of the explosive plays they want to get to in the passing game.
All right, so as we kind of wind this down and wrap it up, let's go bigger picture here. A lot's being made of Buffalo's playoff experience, right, and the edge that they have. You know, as a former player and knowing especially what you do about the culture inside that Jacksonville locker room and what they've been through, what they haven't. How much of a factor is that, sort of the battle-hardened playoff advantage that Buffalo seems to have?
I mean, it can be a huge advantage. Like these games, the playoff games are unlike anything. You guys have been in the stadium. You know the energy is completely different. I tell people it's like playing a Monday Night Football game times 10. It is amped up. The emotions are high. And so the ebbs and swings of the game are significant. So when you're a team that's inexperienced, how do you handle the opening quarter? How do you handle the first time that something goes wrong? Say Trevor Lawrence throws an interception on the first drive. How do you bounce back next play mentality, or does it snowball? When you're a team that has kind of been in that fight, you only get comfortable in those games by being in those games. So the advantage is significant in terms of understanding the moment, the urgency, the intensity, the physicality of the postseason, but it doesn't quite mean that it's the deciding factor. But there is some comfort in being in those games if you played in them before.
Do you believe, Bucky, at all that there's more pressure on the Bills to win this game because of the failures they've had the last 6 years trying to get to the Super Bowl?
No, I don't necessarily believe in that. I think the one thing about the playoffs is everyone feels the urgency that is, because the win or go home nature of the game makes it a very urgent and intense game. Now, the outside noise, if you're not right, can impact you a little bit, where maybe you feel like you're trying to do too much and whatever. And the two people that could be most impacted by it would be Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. And the reason why Sean McDermott could be impacted if he's not focused, the outside noise will tell you that the failures need to lead you to do something different in a critical moment. So if you're a team that has been conservative, well, now in this playoff game, I need to be more aggressive because it hasn't worked. Or if you're aggressive, hey, maybe I need to dial it back because if we've been more conservative in the past, maybe we would have won those games. So you really have to be locked in to who you are and what you believe in, and you have to be willing to stand on it despite all the noise. And then for Josh Allen, everyone is going to say the same thing. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes, they're not in it. This is your year. This should be the thing. But the team is different. This isn't the best team that he's going into the playoffs with. So he has to understand who he's playing with and what do I need to do at this moment to win this game today. And he can't get out of pocket trying to do too much, because when you try to do too much, that's when the bad things happen. So a lot of it is their ability to block out the noise and just do what they've done to get to this point. If they do that, then that's their best chance for them to have success.
Okay. All right. Well, FanDuel, presenting sponsor for this show, for your show, and others on the Believe Network. Super Bowl odds at this point. The Bills are 6th at plus 1,000. The Jaguars 8th at plus 1,300 in the midst of this postseason field as we approach Wild Card Weekend. Does that seem about right to you?
I think the winner of this game is going to the Super Bowl. That's what I believe. And
I've heard that a few people have said that I've heard.
In seeing all the teams, because the Jags pretty much played all the heavyweights going through it. So I've seen Denver, I've seen Seattle, the Rams, they played Houston, all those teams. They're constructed differently. The team that wins this game can go to the show, because the Denver Broncos defense is a different type defense than the Houston Texans. The Texans are physical and rugged and whatever. The Broncos are scheme-driven and aggressive. And so when you break down all the teams, because all the teams in the tournament have a fatal flaw, there is no team that the Bills or Jaguars can't defeat in the tournament. But this game is the toughest game, because I believe this is the most evenly contested game in the first round. And so that's why the winner is going to have a lot of confidence coming out of that. The Bills win, going on the road, knocking off a team that won 8 straight games. It's going to give them a lot of momentum. If they have to play the Patriots, they've already knocked off the Patriots. So there's confidence that's going to come, and I can make the same case for the Jaguars. So to me, the winner of this game is going to be the team that represents the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Interesting take. It brings me way back to like Music City Miracle, where you knew had a really good sense that the winner of that game was going to the Super Bowl.
I mean, that's really it. And so that's what is so fun about it is, one, you guys know, like being in the stadium in a playoff game is different, but when you know and you can feel it and you can sense it and all that other stuff, it's going to be a lot of fun. And so I can't wait to see how it plays out.
All right, last question here, real quick, short response, because I know time is short for you. Bills favored by 1.5. How much fuel to the fire is that adding in the Jacksonville locker room? And do you agree with that line?
Well, I mean, I think they're going to be favored because what you do when you're picking games, you go by quarterback, right? And so we can say, looking at the tournament field, Josh Allen, without question, is the guy that everyone would say QB1 of the AFC. So I understand why he's favored. Now, in terms of motivation and fuel, absolutely. Like in these games, you're looking for any nugget, any bulletin board material that you can put up there. So for Liam Cohen, who has leaned into the disrespect, yeah, it's a nugget. But here's what I can tell you about all those things. It goes out the window within the first 5 minutes. After you kick it off, then it's about execution. And so this is going to be about which team executes and which quarterback is able to finish the game, meaning who makes the critical plays in the fourth quarter. Because no matter how it starts, it always ends up the last 15 minutes are going to decide it. So does Josh Allen outplay Trevor Lawrence or vice versa? That's where the game is going to be decided in the fourth quarter.
All right. Very good. Bucky Brooks, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Former Bill and Jag, Bucky Brooks, host of Believe in Bills here on the Believe Network. Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. I'm Anna Begnini, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo. Bills, Jaguars, wild card playoffs, 1 o'clock on Sunday.